Nobody warns you how weird the first morning on Earth would feel after paradise is gone. There are no roads, no fences, no village smoke in the distance, and not a single grave anywhere, because so far nobody has managed to die. You wake up in a world so new and so unfinished that even the worst thing a person can do to another person doesn't have a name yet. Hey guys, tonight we begin with a world that doesn't have rules yet. We're stepping into the raw, damp, unnervingly empty life of the first family east of Eden, where the grass is wild, the ground fights back, and everyone is making up normal from scratch. You're going to feel what it was like to live when there were only 4 humans on the entire planet, and one terrible act had not yet been invented. So before you get comfortable, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up east of Eden. The good news, the whole world is yours. The bad news, the whole world is yours. You open your eyes on packed earth and a heap of woven plant fibers that barely qualifies as bedding. Everything smells aggressively alive. Wet dirt, crushed grass, animal musk, old smoke, sweat, and that sharp green scent of plants nobody has named yet, because, frankly, everyone's busy trying not to starve. There is no ceiling fan. There is no pillow. There is definitely no plumbing. Your morning soundtrack is wind moving through tall grass, insects buzzing with full personal confidence, and somewhere nearby, a sheep making a noise like a rusty gate with opinions. The air is cold enough to sting your nose. Dew has gotten onto everything, because this world has never heard of weatherproofing. You sit up and immediately get a souvenir from existence in the form of a cramp in your back. That's what happens when your mattress is basically optimistic straw. Your hands are rough before breakfast. Everyone's hands are rough here. Outside, the land rolls out in every direction, huge and empty and mildly insulting. No path has been worn into it yet. No one has dragged stones into walls. No one has put up a sign, planted a hedge, or argued about property lines, because there isn't a neighbor within 100 screaming miles. It's just your family. 4 people. That's it. Family tension gets weird fast when you cannot go cool off in town because town does not exist. You can't visit cousins. There are no cousins. You can't complain to the elders. There are no elders. The oldest humans in the world are your parents, and they're still figuring out how sleeves work in a thorn bush. Your father rises early, joints cracking like dry sticks. He looks like a man who used to belong somewhere softer. His face has that permanently tired look of somebody who remembers better conditions and cannot stop remembering them. He works the soil now, which sounds wholesome until you actually watch it happen. The ground is stubborn, clotted, full of stones, roots, and tiny, hateful thorns that seem personally committed to entering the foot. Every meal begins with a wrestling match against dirt. Your mother carries herself like someone trying not to stare at a door that has been locked behind her forever. Sometimes she goes still in a way that makes the whole camp feel strange. Then she blinks, picks something up, and keeps moving because dinner will not gather itself. And then there are the 2 sons. One of them knows the ground intimately, not in a charming gardening show way, in a kneeling, sweating, blister-splitting, dirt under the nails so deep it's basically permanent way. The other spends his days with animals, which sounds peaceful until you remember animals are filthy, unpredictable, and absolutely determined to wander off the second you look thoughtful. This is humanity at population 4, and somehow the vibes are already complicated. Step outside the shelter and the world hits you full in the face. The sky is enormous, almost rude in its size. No rooftops break it up, no chimney smoke smudges it, no city noise hums in the background. Just open land, wild growth, and the feeling that you are standing in a place too young to know what people are for. The grass is damp against your ankles. Burrs cling to everything woven. Small biting things consider your skin community property. There is mud in one spot, dust in another, and both are determined to end up on your legs by midday. Breakfast is not a cozy domestic ritual. Nobody is flipping little cakes and chatting about weekend plans. Food here is scraped, roasted, torn, ground, and earned the hard way. It tastes of smoke and labor. Sometimes it tastes of grit because the wind has excellent aim. And hanging over all of it is the oddness of your parents' stories. They talk about a garden the way people talk about a dream vacation they can never afford again, except this one had rivers and fruit, and no thorns and no shame, and apparently direct conversations with God. So naturally, every child growing up here gets to hear over and over that life used to be perfect before one catastrophic family incident. No pressure there. You grow up with paradise as a family law and exile as the family business. That's the inheritance. Not land deeds, not heirlooms. A memory of what was lost, handed down by two people who can still picture it. And the planet around you is so empty, it almost feels unfinished. No carts creak past. No traders arrive. No barking dogs from another camp. At night, there aren't even distant lamps to blink on the horizon. Darkness just pours over the land all at once, thick and total, while the fire pops and everybody sits a little closer because outside that small orange circle is a whole world with teeth. Even the silence is unsettling, not peaceful, spacious in a way that makes your skin prickle. Because this is a place with no precedent. Nobody can say, last time this happened, we did this. There was no last time. There are no customs, no courts, no village busybody to gasp and spread scandal. No one has ever had to invent manners for brothers in a world where brothers are nearly half the male population. You learn by trying things and regretting them immediately. Need shelter? Better start stacking branches and hope the roof doesn't collapse on your face. Need clothes? Enjoy scratching all day in badly treated skins and rough woven fibers that feel like they were designed by an enemy. Need dinner? Fantastic. Go negotiate with a landscape that acts like feeding you is a personal inconvenience. And still, beneath all that daily struggle, something heavier sits in the camp. Your parents know what it is to disobey. They know what it is to hear judgment. They know what it is to leave a place where everything came easy and step into a world where every mouthful costs sweat. That knowledge hangs on them like smoke in old wool. The sons don't carry the memory of Eden. They carry the consequences. So this is where tonight begins. In a world still damp from its own beginning, with wet earth underfoot and wild grass brushing your shins. 4 humans on the whole sprawling planet. No laws, no police, no graves, no word yet for the thing one brother will do to another. And that is the truly chilling part. You are living in the last quiet days before human violence has a history. Before anyone knows a body can fall and not rise again. Before the ground, already cursed and stubborn, is asked to swallow something worse than sweat. For now, morning has only just begun. The sheep are shifting. Your father is already looking at the field with resignation. Your mother is awake, carrying sorrow like an extra layer of skin. And the two brothers are still only brothers, moving through the grass under a wide young sky in a world too new to understand what is coming. The sun is higher now. Your back already aches. That is impressive, because the day has barely started and you have done almost nothing except exist in the wrong century. The dew is burning off the grass. The insects have upgraded from annoying to relentless. Somewhere near the shelter, a fly lands on your arm with the confidence of a creature that has never once been swatted by a newspaper. So you stand right in the middle of it, the first family on earth, trying to build a life from nothing. Adam is already in the field, if you can call it a field. It is really a patch of earth he has glared at long enough to claim emotionally. The soil looks lumpy, offended, and full of hidden rocks waiting to ruin his day. He drives a rough tool into it again and again, and every strike sends a little shock up his arms. His hands are a whole situation. The skin across his palms is split in pale lines. Old blisters have hardened into calluses, and new ones are forming underneath like the ground is, running a subscription service for pain. Dirt is packed into every crack. When he grips the handle, you can see the sting move through his face, that tiny tightening around the mouth of a man who no longer expects comfort and is still irritated about it. He used to tend a garden where everything cooperated. Now he spends his mornings in a fist fight with thistles, roots, stones, and clods of clay that break apart only after dramatic resistance. Every time he pulls one weed, 3 more appear, like the world's first bad customer service experience. Sweat runs down his neck. Dust sticks to it. By midday, he smells like sun-baked skin, crushed weeds, and despair. And the ground does not care. That may be the strangest part. You can almost feel Adam waiting, deep down, for the land to remember him. For some scrap of old gentleness to wake up and say, "Sorry about all that. Here, have an easy harvest." Instead, the earth behaves like a landlord with a grudge. It takes everything. It gives back, slowly. When he kneels, thorns get him through the fabric at his knees. When he stands, his back protests. When he reaches into the soil, something sharp finds him. Always. It is never dramatic enough to stop him. Just constant little insults. Tiny bites of pain all day long, the kind that wear a person down faster than one big injury ever could. And Eve sees all of it. She is moving around the camp with her own work in her hands, but you can tell she notices every wince. She carries food to be cleaned, fibers to be twisted, skins to be scraped, embers to be coaxed back into flame. Nothing about her day is light. Everything needs doing twice, because the first attempt usually fails in some stupid, smoky, splintered way. She also remembers paradise, not in a vague, dreamy way, not like some distant story from childhood. She remembers it the way your tongue remembers a missing tooth, except this is a whole world that used to fit around her. A river without mud in it, fruit without rot, light without fear, work that did not punish you for showing up. That memory follows her like a phantom limb. She reaches for things that are no longer there. You see it in the pauses, the half-second of stillness before she bends to pick up another armful of brush. The way she looks at a tree heavy with fruit and still inspects every branch like disappointment has trained her well. Paradise is gone, but her body hasn't fully accepted the memo. Then there is food, which in this household is less a meal plan and more an ongoing negotiation with reality. Breakfast might be a handful of gathered plants, some coarse mash, bits of fruit if the season is being generous, and whatever can be roasted before the fire decides to become difficult. There is no cupboard, no clay jar of snacks, no little emergency crackers for when everyone gets irritable. If food exists, someone worked for it recently, and with significant emotional cost. Nothing is easy to chew. The grain, when they have it, is coarse and stubborn. Tiny bits of grit get into it, because grinding anything on primitive stone means your flour comes with complementary pebbles. Your jaw gets a workout whether you asked for one or not. You do not eat a soft loaf. You gnaw on effort. And if meat enters the picture, nobody is marinating it with rosemary and pretending this is rustic luxury. It is smoke, fat, tendon and fire management. It drips. It spatters. It gets in your beard. The smell clings to your clothes for days and announces your presence to every bug in the region. You eat because hunger is louder than squeamishness. There are no grandparents to hand the children little bites and laugh. No aunt wanders over to distract a fussy toddler. No older women sit nearby saying, "No, no, not like that. You'll spoil the hide. Use the scraper this way." Eve does not get a village. She gets trial and error. She gets postpartum recovery in the open world with no manual and no neighbor bringing broth. Then Cain is born. And that is not a normal birth, because absolutely none of this is normal. She has never seen another woman do this. Adam has never watched a child arrive. There is no midwife, no experienced voice, no one saying, "Push now, breathe, you're doing fine." There is just pain, fear, blood, shouting, and two very confused adults finding out in real time why future generations will be deeply thankful for medical infrastructure. When she finally holds him, the whole camp changes. There he is, the first human child ever held by human hands. Warm, squirming, loud, slippery, furious about the entire process, which, honestly, fair. Eve looks at him with the wild shock of someone who has just pulled a tiny person out of nowhere and would like everyone to take a moment to appreciate how insane that is. She names him Cain. Acquired, gotten, obtained. Because what else do you even call the first baby in world history? You don't have naming traditions yet. There is no family tree to work from, no grandfathers to honor, no list of tasteful options. You look at the wrinkled little creature in your arms and basically say, "Well, I have acquired one. That'll do." And Cain grows up under the full force of firstborn energy. Everything is happening to him first. First scraped knee, first fever, first tantrum, first time a child puts something disgusting in his mouth, and both parents panic because there is no precedent for whether he'll die from that. Adam and Eve are inventing parenthood, while Cain is inventing childhood, and nobody involved knows what they're doing. He learns from two traumatized adults who keep mentioning a garden he has never seen. Imagine being little and hearing over and over that life used to be effortless before your parents made one absolutely catastrophic decision. The fruit was better. The weather was better. God walked with them. Nobody had to scrape burned grain off a stone and call it dinner. Cain grows up in the shadow of a place he cannot visit and a mistake he did not make. That gets under your skin. You can feel it in him as he gets older. He's strong early because life demands it. There are no toys except sticks, stones, animal bones, and whatever can be stacked, thrown, or regretted. His games are basically work with fewer instructions. He learns to carry, drag, pull, lift, and endure before he learns patience, which turns out to be a problem later. Adam teaches him the ground because that is what Adam knows now. So Cain learns the moodiness of soil. He learns where water lingers after rain and where it runs off uselessly. He learns how roots tangle under the surface like they are plotting. He learns to dig, clear, break, plant, and wait. Mostly, he learns to sweat. The earth is his first teacher, and frankly, it is a jerk. It rewards effort in the same way a particularly cold employer rewards loyalty, sparingly and with unclear standards. You can do the same work 2 weeks in a row and get completely different results. One patch produces enough to feel hopeful. Another gives you leaves, bitterness, and insult. Cain grows up with dirt under his nails and frustration in his chest. He watches his father work with the grim concentration of a man paying off a debt he can never quite finish paying. Adam does not lecture much. He demonstrates. He grunts. He corrects the angle of Cain's tool. He points to weeds with the weariness of someone introducing a child to lifelong enemies. Sometimes, in the heat, he stops and stares toward nowhere, and you know his mind has gone back to the garden again. Cain sees that too. That may be the beginning of something sour in him. Not hatred, not yet. Just the constant feeling that whatever he does, it happens on damaged ground. His father had paradise and lost it. Cain got thorns and chores and family stories about rivers he will never bathe in. Then Abel is born. And suddenly, Cain is not the only miracle in camp anymore. That alone would be enough to ruin a firstborn's afternoon. But Abel arrives into a household that at least sort of knows what a baby is now. There is still pain, blood, panic, and no proper towels, because civilization remains a distant fantasy. But this time, there is a little less terror and a little more competence. Cain notices. Of course he notices. Every older sibling in human history notices when the second child shows up, and everyone acts calmer, more experienced, less dramatically amazed by basic baby functions. Cain had to be the prototype. Abel gets version 2, with some bugs fixed. It is extremely annoying. As boys, they are different early. Cain is solid, serious, intense. In that way some children are, like they came into the world already frowning at the management. He does not like failure. He does not like waiting. He especially does not like being corrected when he is tired, which is often. The world pushes back on him, and he pushes back harder. Abel is lighter somehow. Not weak, just easier in his own skin. He laughs faster. He wanders farther. He notices animal behavior with the kind of quiet attention Cain gives to weather and soil. While Cain looks at land and sees labor, Abel looks at animals and sees patterns, quirks, needs. At first, they both help with everything, because there are 4 humans total and nobody gets to specialize before chores. Cain gathers brush. Abel gathers brush. Cain helps pull roots. Abel helps pull roots. Cain gets kicked by a lamb. Abel gets kicked by a lamb. This family has no room for preciousness. Everybody smells bad. Everybody works. Everybody gets scratched by something. But as the years pass, the split becomes obvious. Cain stays with the soil. He knows the fields such as they are. He understands planting times, patchy growth, the misery of heat, the danger of too little rain and too much rain. He can feel a bad season coming in his knees and temper. His shoulders broaden from hauling and chopping. His palms become almost leather. Abel drifts toward the flocks. And flocks, at this point, does not mean some charming pastoral painting with fluffy sheep and a tasteful sunset. It means bleating, manure, burrs in wool, animals getting sick for no apparent reason, and at least one ram who seems to wake up every morning eager to start trouble. Abel spends his days smelling like lanolin, grass, and barnyard breath. It is not glamorous. Still, there is movement in his work. He walks with the animals over ridges and through grass. He watches the sky. He learns each creature's nonsense. One limps, one strays. One eats everything, and then looks shocked when its stomach hurts. He develops the patient look of a man who spends all day managing livestock and all night pretending not to hear them. Cain notices that too, because Cain stays close to the ground that resists him, while Abel moves through open space with living creatures that at least sometimes follow. Cain bends. Abel watches. Cain digs. Abel leads. Cain comes home caked with dirt. Abel comes home smelling like sheep, which is not better, but somehow reads less defeated. Family dinner must be incredible. Picture the four of them around the fire at night, smoke blowing directly into someone's face because wind is petty. Adam is tired in his bones. Eve is dividing food with that silent math mothers do, giving the bigger portions to the hungriest mouths and pretending she isn't still hungry herself. Cain sits with his jaw tight. Abel says something light, maybe even funny, and it lands wrong because the camp is already full of old sadness and new irritation. Nobody can leave. There is no going for a walk downtown to cool off. No friend down the road. No separate bedrooms with doors to slam. If Cain is angry, everyone is in the splash zone. If Eve is grieving, the whole camp feels it. If Adam goes quiet, silence spreads like smoke. And there are moments when Eve tells the garden stories again. Maybe while cleaning grain. Maybe while mending. Maybe while both boys are close enough to hear, but far enough to pretend they are not listening. She talks about trees that gave fruit without disease. Water clear enough to reflect your face without mud clouding it. Shade that did not hide danger. The presence of God near enough to be felt without terror. Cain listens like a boy hearing about a country where he does not have citizenship. Abel listens differently, more softly, less possessive. To Cain, Eden is a family inheritance stolen before he could touch it. To Abel, it is a sadness in his mother's voice. Same story, different wound. You can feel the loneliness of all four of them pressing in from every side. There are only these faces, these voices, these habits. Year after year, these same footsteps. Around the shelter, these same arguments over work, these same stories, these same weather worries. No fresh personalities arrive. No travelers bring gossip. Nobody shows up with figs and weird opinions. Humanity is one household, and the household is tense. Even celebration would feel small. A good harvest is still just 4 people eating. A healthy birth in the flock is still just one more mouth to manage. A clear night under stars so sharp they almost hurt is still shared with the same little circle of exhausted people, all of them carrying private thoughts they cannot fully explain. And now we arrive at the part nobody talks about. What does it do to a person to be the first son of the first man? Cain grows up with impossible comparisons. Adam can say, "I remember what the world was like before this." Cain cannot. Eve can say, "Once there was no pain in childbirth." Cain cannot imagine that at all. His entire life is aftermath. He did not break paradise, but he has to live in the debris. That can harden you, especially when your younger brother seems more at ease, especially when your work is the direct management of cursed ground, especially when every meal on the fire is a reminder that your family survives by scraping life out of reluctant soil. Cain becomes the kind of man who stores frustration instead of spending it. You know the type. He says little when he is angry, which is somehow worse. He works harder. His face closes. He stares at the field like it has personally insulted his ancestors, which, to be fair, it kind of has. He carries the firstborn weight of being expected to know, lead, provide, and absorb, despite the small detail that he is also just a man in a world no one has figured out. Abel, meanwhile, learns gentleness without becoming soft. You have to be tougher than people think to manage animals all day. Sheep are vulnerable in the stupidest ways. They get lost. They get tangled. They panic. They trust badly. Abel learns watchfulness. He learns to rise at strange noises. He learns to carry lambs, check wounds, pull burrs from wool, and stay alert for anything with teeth. His hands get rough too, just differently. Less cracked by dirt, more nicked by shears, horns, stones, and rope. He has the smell of open pasture on him, mixed with sheep oil and smoke. When he comes near the camp, the flock's smell arrives first, and nobody is thrilled about it. So now the household has become two men and their callings. One belongs to the soil, one belongs to the flock. One comes home with mud caked to his calves and dust on his tongue. One comes home with burrs in his hem and animal stink in his hair. Adam watches both of them, maybe with pride, maybe with worry, probably both. Eve watches too, and mothers notice things long before they have language for them. She sees Cain's silences stretching longer. She sees Abel's ease around him thinning into caution. She hears the little edge in certain replies, the kind that sounds trivial until later when you remember it and wish you'd paid attention. The evenings get quieter, not peaceful quiet, thick quiet, the sort that sits between people at a fire while fat hisses into the flame and someone pokes embers harder than necessary. You can almost feel the family's shape changing, tightening around some future disaster none of them can name because the category does not exist yet. There is still work tomorrow, of course. There is always work tomorrow. The field will need tending. The flock will need watching. Eve will rise and make something from almost nothing again. Adam will wake with his body already sore and his memories already waiting for him. The brothers will go out under the same huge sky, each carrying his own part of the curse. And in that tiny household east of Eden, loneliness ripens into temperament. Temperament hardens into habit, and habit begins to lean towards something darker. Not yet. For now, it is only life. Hard, repetitive, intimate life. Smoke in your eyes, dirt in your food. A mother remembering paradise. A father bleeding into the ground. One brother learning to master the field. Another learning to keep the flock. 4 people on an unfinished earth trying to call this normal. But the morning isn't over yet, and before long, those 2 brothers will carry their work to 2 altars under an open sky. And then comes the day that splits everything in 2. You can feel it before anyone says much. The camp has that brittle quiet people get when something important is happening, and nobody wants to be the first to make it awkward. Adam is up early, moving slower than usual, as if he knows this day matters, but would also like his joints to file a formal complaint. Eve has that watchful look again, the one that says she is trying not to interfere while interfering with her eyes. The air is cool at first. Wet grass brushes your ankles. The ground still holds the night's dampness, and every step releases the smell of raw earth, crushed stems, and old ash from last evening's fire. Somewhere nearby, one of Abel's animals lets out a long nasal complaint, like it has personally reviewed the morning and found it unacceptable. Both brothers are already gathering what they will bring. Cain is in his patch of worked ground, crouched low, hands moving through the crop with the care of a man, selecting from his own labor. You watch him pull produce from the earth piece by piece, thick heads of grain, fruit from the ground, whatever this season has grudgingly surrendered after weeks of heat, sweat, and arguments with weeds. Dirt cakes his fingers. His nails are rimmed black. His forearms are streaked with soil and tiny cuts where stems and rough edges have scraped him again. Nothing about this offering is effortless. Every stalk has a history. Every bundle carries mornings of bent back, cracked palms, sun in the eyes, and that endless irritation of working land that acts like it regrets your existence. Cain did not find this in abundance. He dragged it out of cursed soil one stubborn handful at a time, and he knows exactly what that cost. A bruise on the shin from a hidden stone, a split knuckle from a tool handle, whole afternoons lost to pulling up roots that seem to have wrapped themselves around the world. You can almost see him measuring all of that as he gathers the produce, not in words, but in the hard set of his mouth. Nearby, Abel is choosing from the flock. That scene is different immediately, louder for one thing. Sheep never do anything quietly if they can help it. They shuffle, snort, butt, sidestep, and emit that strange wet wool smell, a combination of lanolin, animal breath, trampled grass, and manure warm from the source. It is the ancient equivalent of walking into a barn and realizing your shoes will never recover. Abel moves through them with practiced ease. He puts a hand on one animal's neck, checks another's flank, looks over the young firstborn from the flock with the focused attention of a man who knows each creature's weight and quality. He is not grabbing whatever wanders closest. He is choosing carefully, the firstborn, the fattest portions, the best. You notice the difference even before Cain does. Cain is gathering from what the earth gave. Abel is selecting the finest from what the flock produced. That is a small difference on the outside, tiny, almost rude in its subtlety. The kind of difference that ruins your entire week once you realize it. The sun climbs higher while they work. The coolness burns away. Flies appear with the speed and confidence of creatures who believe all food belongs to them by divine right. They buzz around the fruit, around the wool, around everyone's face, settling on sweat and lips and corners of eyes like tiny winged insults. Cain swats one away with a sharp motion. Abel barely seems to notice them. That probably doesn't help. By mid-morning, the place is ready. Out in an open field, under a sky so huge it makes you feel unhelpfully small, two altars stand side by side. Altars is a generous term, honestly. These are stacks of rough stones arranged by men who have no architectural tradition, no instruction manual, and no older generations saying, "No, not like that. The sacred rocks go here." It is Bronze Age IKEA, without the little hex key and with far more existential pressure. The stones are uneven. Some still have dirt clinging to them. One rocks slightly when touched. Another has a sharp edge that catches your skin if you're careless. They are not beautiful. They are sincere in the most alarming possible way. Cain approaches one altar carrying the fruit of the ground. You see the offering in his arms. Grain gathered and bundled. Produce from the field. The smell of cut plants rises warm in the air, green and dry at the same time. There is dust on everything. Fine powder from chaff clings to his tunic and forearms. A leaf sticks to the sweat on his wrist. Abel comes to the other altar with the firstborn of his flock and the fat portions. And now the smell changes completely. Blood has a smell before you even see it fully. Metallic, hot, thick in the air. The rich animal scent mixes with smoke from kindling, singed wool, fresh-cut flesh, and that heavy, sweet fat smell that settles into your throat. It is not subtle. It is not tasteful. It is a full-body announcement that something alive has been offered up here, and your nose will be processing it for a while. Adam and Eve are there too. They stand back enough to let the brothers come forward, but not so far that they can pretend not to care. Adam's face is lined deeper in this light. Eve's hands are clasped together low, fingers tight, knuckles pale under the skin. They have known God in ways their sons have only heard about. That alone makes the silent stranger. Nobody explains the procedure. That may be the worst part. There is no little speech, no kindly reminder about acceptable offerings. No sign posted near the altar saying best portions this way, agricultural items to the left, thank you for your cooperation. Humanity is 4 people old, and apparently everybody is still expected to know what is fitting. It is absurd. You spend your life pulling food from hostile ground, and when the big spiritual moment arrives, there is no onboarding, no orientation, just vibes and terror. Cain lays his offering down. You can see care in the arrangement. He does not toss it there casually. He sets it out with the solemnity of a man who is bringing the work of his hands and expecting that this means something. This is what he has. This is what he does. This is what his whole body has been shaped around. Abel lays his down too. His offering is richer, heavier, more costly in a visible way. Fat glistens. Blood darkens the stone. Smoke begins to curl upward as fire catches. It rises in twisting grey streams that sting your eyes and carry the smell of burning flesh into the open air. The sheep noise fades back. Even the insects seem less bold for a moment. Then everyone waits. That waiting goes on longer than you want it to. You stand in the field with heat gathering on your skin and smoke drifting sideways. And nobody moves much because what are you even supposed to do? Check your messages. There are no messages. There is only sky, stone, sweat, blood, produce, and the unbearable awareness that you are standing before God with whatever you've brought. Cain keeps his face still, but you can see the effort. His shoulders are squared too carefully. His jaw is clenched enough to make a muscle twitch near his temple. There is dust on his cheek and a tiny streak of sweat cutting through it. He's trying to hold himself like a man who has done what was required and expects to be received. Abel looks intent, but lighter. Not smug, not yet. Just open in a way Cain is not. Abel's hands are red at the fingertips from handling the offering. His tunic smells like sheep and smoke. A smear of fat shines on one wrist where he wiped his hand and missed a spot. He looks like a man giving gladly. And then it happens. Favor falls on Abel and his offering, not on Cain. There is no way to make that gentle. Whatever the moment looks like in that field, everybody knows it at once. You know that sick instant when a whole room understands something before anyone speaks? Like when a teacher hands back one exam face down and leaves yours on the desk with a long sigh. Like when your younger sibling wins the family approval lottery and you are standing there holding a casserole nobody wants. That, but with God involved, so the humiliation has no ceiling. Abel is accepted, Cain is not. The field goes so still it almost hurts. Smoke still drifts. A fly lands on a piece of cut fruit. Somewhere in the distance, an animal bleats, absurdly normal, and the sound makes everything worse. Because the world has the nerve to continue while Cain is standing there with rejection burning straight through his chest. You feel the heat rise in his face. It starts in the neck, then climbs. His ears redden. His mouth tightens until his lips thin out almost white. His nostrils flare once, sharply. He does not look at his offering. He does not look at the altar. He definitely does not look at Abel. His face falls. And that phrase sounds simple until you imagine it happening in real time. The life drains out of his expression. What had been controlled becomes heavy. His eyes darken. His whole face seems to sink inward, like a curtain dropping all at once. Hurt first, then confusion, then that dangerous hardening that comes when pain decides it would rather be anger. Because what exactly did he do wrong? That is the knife in this scene. He did not stroll in empty-handed. He did not bring rotten weeds and half a potato with a shrug. He brought fruit of the ground. He brought what he had grown. He brought the work that has defined his life. And the ground itself was cursed before he was even born. Think about what that feels like in your body. You have spent years laboring under your father's punishment. The same soil your father was condemned to. Fight has become your entire vocation. You bleed into it. You sweat into it. You haul life out of it. Then you bring that life to God, and somehow the answer is no. Meanwhile, your younger brother gets the nod. Of course he does. The shepherd with the open face. The one who brings the firstborn and the fat portions. The one whose gift looks visibly lavish beside your bundles of produce. The one who always seems a little less clenched by life. The one who smells like sheep, which is frankly punishment enough, and yet somehow today he is the favored one. Cain cannot even look at him. You see his eyes flick once in Abel's direction and away again so fast it is practically pain. His breathing changes, shorter, sharper. The muscles in his forearms stand out as his hands curl and uncurl at his sides. Dirt flakes from his knuckles. A bit of chaff clings to his tunic, absurd and ordinary and impossible to care about now. Abel notices. How could he not? The accepted offering sits there, smoking. The smell of rendered fat hangs thick and rich in the air, almost indecently satisfying. Next to it, Cain's gift feels suddenly exposed, dry, earthy, quiet. You can practically hear the comparison happening inside Cain's skull, and it is not going well in there. Adam sees it too. His face goes tight in a different way now. This is not the old grief of Eden. This is a father's instant dread. The look of a man watching something flare in his son and realizing he does not know how to put it out. He knows the expression on Cain's face because he has worn versions of it himself. Shame has a family resemblance. Eve's gaze moves between them. First Cain, then Abel, then back again. Her mouth parts like she might speak, but she doesn't. What would she even say? Be happy for your brother? Calm down? Maybe next offering. This is the world's first catastrophic sibling moment. No parenting book has prepared her for divine preference, detonating in front of both boys. And now we arrive at the part nobody escapes quickly enough. The humiliation lingers. Nobody can just wrap this up and head home in separate carriages. There are no separate carriages. There is one family, one camp, one path back, one long afternoon waiting to happen under a sky that suddenly feels much too wide. Cain has to stand there while the accepted offering smokes and his own rejection settles over him like dust. This is where anger gets personal. At first, it points upward. You can feel that. The confusion, the hot question with no place to go. Why not mine? Why his? What was missing? What was wrong with what I brought? But pain has a way of looking for the nearest face, and the nearest face belongs to Abel. Poor Abel, honestly. He has done the dreadful thing younger siblings sometimes do, which is succeed while standing too close to an older brother having a crisis. He has not stolen anything. He has not mocked. He has not shoved his accepted offering 6 inches higher for better visibility. He is simply there, alive, favored, and impossible to ignore. That is enough. Cain's whole body changes around that fact. He stands stiffer now, as if every joint has locked. His chin dips, but not in humility, more like containment, the kind people use when they are keeping a flood behind their teeth. There is a shine of sweat across his forehead, and one vein throbs near his temple. His eyes look flat in a way that should make everyone nervous. Abel shifts his weight, just slightly, a tiny movement. But in moments like this, every small thing becomes unbearable. The scrape of a sandal on stone, the drip of something from the altar, the hiss of fat in the fire. The ordinary sounds of sacrifice are suddenly enormous, each one landing on Cain's nerves like a thrown pebble. He brought what he had. That thought would not leave him. You can feel it circling. I brought what I had. I brought what I made. I brought the field's yield. I brought the life I've lived. Was that not enough? Was I not enough? Those questions do ugly things when they stay trapped inside a man who already knows how to store frustration like dry tinder. And there is no elder to step in, no uncle clapping a hand on Cain's shoulder and steering him away for a long walk. No grandmother pressing bread into his palm and saying, "Listen to me, this is not the end of you." No village priest quietly explaining the difference between an ordinary gift and a first and best gift. Humanity remains tragically understaffed, so everyone just stands in it. The sky above is brilliant and pitiless. Heat presses down. Smoke crawls into your clothes and hair. The altars sit there side by side, crude and unforgettable, like 2 receipts from the same day proving that identical moments can have very different outcomes. One offering is received. One is not. One brother rises in favor. The other sinks in himself. You almost want somebody to start an argument. At least then the pressure would have somewhere to go. A shout, a protest, a slammed stone, anything. But silence can be much worse because it lets the feelings spread. It gives humiliation room to root itself. Cain says nothing. That is not comforting. His silence is not peace. It is compression. It is a lid forced down on boiling water. He stares somewhere low and distant, not really seeing the field anymore. The corners of his mouth pull hard. His chest rises and falls like he has just finished running, though he has barely moved. Abel says nothing too. Smart, probably. What is he supposed to say? Sorry, God liked mine? Tough break, brother? There are no good lines available. Every sentence would sound ridiculous standing next to those altars under that sky. So they gather themselves in the aftermath. Abel near his accepted offering, Cain near his rejected one. And the tragedy of it is not just that Cain hurts. Of course he hurts. The tragedy is that you can feel the hurt choosing its shape. It could become grief. It could become humility. It could even become change. But that is not where it leans. Not in his face. Not in his hands. Not in the way he refuses to lift his eyes. It leans toward fury. Slow at first, then steadier, like a coal taking air. By the time they turn to leave the field, the day has already changed its nature. The path home is the same path as always, but nothing on it feels ordinary now. Grass whispers at their ankles. Dust clings to their feet. The smell of smoke follows them. Behind them, those rough stones remain where they were built, and the memory of what happened there settles over the family like a stain that will not wash out. One brother has been seen with favor. One brother has not. That difference is now living inside Cain, warm and sharp and growing teeth. And before this day is done, someone will speak to him while he stands on that edge, with anger crouched close enough to breathe on him. But here's the part that makes this whole thing worse in the most astonishing way. God does not stand far off and let Cain stew like a forgotten pot on the fire. He steps in. You can feel the moment before you understand it. The walk back from the field has gone badly. Not loudly badly, quietly badly, which is often worse. Abel is a few paces ahead at one point, then behind, then off to the side, as if even he can sense that the air around his brother has become dangerous, and he does not know why. Nobody wants to be too close to Cain. Not Adam, not Eve, not Abel. Maybe not even Cain. He moves like a man carrying something hot inside his ribs. His shoulders are stiff. His hands keep closing as though they are reaching for a tool that is not there. Dust sticks to the sweat on his calves. A smear of dirt darkens one side of his face, and he has not bothered to wipe it away because grooming is for people who are not busy losing a battle inside their own skull. Back at the camp, the normal chores wait with insulting cheerfulness. Animals still need water. Firewood still needs gathering. Somebody has to deal with the hide stretched near the shelter that smells like wet dog, old blood, and a regrettable life choice. The world has this very annoying habit of continuing to require practical tasks while your soul is on fire. Cain does not settle. He does not sit and breathe and think things through like a man in a useful instructional tablet. He stalks. He stands. He starts one task and abandons it. He kicks at a clump of earth hard enough to send dirt spraying over his ankle. He drags a hand across the back of his neck and leaves a streak of mud there. His face has fallen. Yes. But now it is doing more than falling. It is setting. Hardening, like clay left too long in the heat. What began as hurt is being baked into something else, and everybody around him can feel it, even if they do not have neat words for it. Eve watches him from near the fire. She is crushing something in a stone bowl, maybe grain, maybe herbs, maybe her own patience. Her eyes keep lifting toward Cain and dropping away again. There is fear in her face, but also recognition. She has seen desire turn sharp before. She has watched a moment of inward appetite become an outward catastrophe. That memory never really left her. Adam tries once. He says Cain's name in that careful tone fathers use when they are attempting to sound calm while mentally preparing for disaster. Cain does not answer, or maybe he does, but only with the kind of grunt that means, if you value this afternoon, keep walking. Adam keeps walking. Reasonable. Abel, meanwhile, is doing the impossible job of existing nearby. That is all, just existing. He checks the flock. He lifts one lamb that has wedged itself somewhere stupid, because sheep can locate trouble with the commitment of professional interns. He rinses his hands. He glances toward his brother once, maybe twice. Every movement is normal, and every normal movement lands on Cain like an insult. You know that horrible feeling when somebody else's breathing starts to annoy you? Cain is there. He can hear Abel moving through camp, and it scrapes at him. The soft bleat of a lamb. The sound of water poured from one vessel to another. The little clack of stones under a sandal. Tiny sounds, petty sounds. But anger loves tiny sounds. It collects them like evidence for a trial nobody asked for. And then, in the middle of this sour, smoke-stained afternoon, God speaks to him. Not to Adam, the father. Not to Eve, who still carries the ache of Eden. Not even to both brothers together. To Cain. That alone should stop you for a second. Because Cain is not being ignored. He is not being abandoned to his mood. He is not being watched from some impossible distance while his anger swells and darkens. He's being addressed, directly, personally, in the middle of the spiral. Why are you angry? The question lands with almost unbearable intimacy. Not because God does not know. Everybody knows why Cain is angry. Cain knows why Cain is angry. The question is worse than that. It presses on the part of the anger Cain does not want to uncover. The hurt beneath it. The pride under the hurt. The wounded place he would rather protect with rage than expose to light. Why has your face fallen? Again, not distant, not abstract. It is as close as a hand under the chin. You can almost see Cain freeze. Not soften. Freeze. His body goes still in that animal way, the way something does when it hears movement in the brush and has not yet decided whether to bolt or bite. His chest rises, holds, falls. The camp sounds continue around him, but farther away now. Fire crackles. A sheep coughs out one of those weird boxy sheep noises that sounds deeply unconvinced by creation. Cain says nothing, and now comes the mercy in it. If you do well, will you not be accepted? There it is, the way back, plain and immediate. Not a locked door, not a divine shrug, not too late, sorry, better luck next generation. The invitation is right there in front of him. Lift your head, change course. This can still turn. The day is not finished wrecking itself unless you help it. You can feel how desperately open that sentence is. It is not a trap. It is not a riddle carved into a stone wall by a cruel game master with too much time on his hands. It is simple enough to fit in the mouth of a wounded man. Do what is right. Bring your heart back into order. You are not doomed to stay in this shape. Cain could take that. He could let the anger crack open into grief. He could go somewhere alone and curse and cry and pound the dirt with both fists until the poison runs out. He could return tomorrow with something better, something first, something offered without keeping score. He could look at Abel and say, I hate this, but I am not going to hate you. All of those doors are still open. For one trembling moment, the future still has options. And then comes the warning. If you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door, That image arrives low to the ground, not soaring, not philosophical, not a grand lecture under dramatic clouds. It is an animal image, and that makes it worse because everybody in this family knows animals. They know the look of a predator half hidden in grass. They know the stillness that is not peace. They know what it means when something lowers itself close to the earth and waits. Crouching at the door, you can see it immediately. A shape just beyond the threshold. Shoulder muscles tight, belly close to the dust, ears angled forward, breath hot, eyes fixed, not asleep, not wandering, waiting. The sort of waiting that has hunger in it. And the door is so close, not out in some far valley, not beyond the mountain, not years from now after a complex moral decline and several regrettable choices involving strangers, and fermented fruit, at the door, right there, close enough that if you reach for the latch with your bad mood still in charge, it comes through with you. Its desire is for you. That line is chilling in the oldest possible way. This thing wants Cain, not his crops, not his afternoon. Him. It wants to master him, pull him under, wrap itself around his thoughts until the hurt feels righteous and the righteous thing feels impossible. It wants his mouth, his hands, his choices. It wants to ride his anger like a man climbs a donkey and point him toward ruin. And yes, it is appalling. The first family on earth cannot even have one bad altar day without evil showing up at the front flap of the tent like a feral cat with murder in its heart. No privacy, no peace, no emotional support hammock, just cosmic danger squatting at your entrance, waiting for you to make one more terrible decision. But the warning is not the end of the sentence. You must rule over it. There, the command. Sharp and clean. Not because it will be easy. Not because Cain is naturally calm. Not because wounded pride is some tiny inconvenience he can fold up and store in a basket. He must rule over it because he can. The warning would be mockery otherwise. God is not saying, look at that beast, shame about your chances. He is saying, master it before it masters you. You can almost feel the air after those words. Thin, bright, mercilessly clear. Cain stands there with the choice laid out in front of him as plainly as a path in open country. One direction leads back toward acceptance. The other leads toward the crouching thing. God has interrupted the entire disaster to hand him the decision while it still matters. That is what makes this moment so intimate and so terrifying. Cain is not stumbling in the dark. He has been warned to his face. No one can claim confusion now. Abel probably cannot hear these words from where he is, but you can imagine him nearby, adjusting a tether or moving a vessel, unaware that the whole future of his life is balancing on his brother's next inward movement. Adam is close enough to notice that something has changed in Cain's posture. Eve has gone very still. Even the camp feels as if it is listening. And then there is the silence, long enough to notice a fly. It lands on the rim of a bowl near the fire and rubs its little front legs together, like a tiny villain preparing a statement. Smoke drifts low. One of the sheep tears at dry grass with that steady ripping sound that somehow makes everything lonelier. Cain breathes in through his nose, out through his mouth, but not slower. That matters, because this is the point where you almost want some visible sign of surrender, a shoulder dropping, a fist unclenching, the sharpness leaving his jaw. Something, anything. A human body often tells the truth before the mouth does. Cain's body is telling a bad story. His neck is still tight. The muscle in his cheek still jumps. His eyes do not fill with tears. They narrow. His hands do not open. They hang there ready, the fingers flexing once, twice, as if they are learning the shape of future violence before his mind has fully admitted it. The anger has been named, exposed, challenged, and somehow it still sits in him like iron. He hears the warning. You know he hears it. This is not a misunderstanding caused by poor acoustics and a strong breeze. He is not nodding vaguely while mentally composing tomorrow's seed plan. The words have reached him. The choice is real. The intervention is immediate. And yet, hearing is not the same as yielding. That is one of the ugliest things about anger. It can survive clarity. Sometimes a person is told exactly what is happening to them, and instead of waking up, they grip the feeling harder because letting it go would mean admitting they are not the injured hero of the hour. Cain has been offered a way back, and the offer itself now presses on his pride. To take it, he would have to lower himself. He would have to accept correction while Abel still breathes nearby. For some men, that is harder than stone. So the silence stretches. You can feel everybody waiting for Cain to answer. Maybe Adam hopes for a word. Maybe Eve hopes for one breath that sounds less like a man holding a spear behind his teeth. Maybe heaven itself waits in that awful pause. Not because God lacks knowledge, but because moments like this are real moments. Choices happen in time. A person either masters the thing crouching at the door or opens up to it. Cain does not argue. He does not confess either. He offers no protest, no apology, no plea for help. No, Lord, I am furious. No, show me what to do. No, keep me from this. Nothing. His silence is not the humble silence of a man receiving correction. It is the sealed silence of a man keeping company with his resentment. And that silence is a door handle turning. The camp goes on around him in all its grubby little reality. Fire smoke in your eyes, dust on your feet, animal smell hanging thick in the late heat. The rank sweetness of dung baking in the sun, because apparently nobody gets one dignified spiritual crisis without livestock contributing their opinions. Life remains bodily, ordinary, embarrassingly physical. And right in the middle of it, something invisible has lowered itself nearer. Sin is no longer just crouching at the door. You get the dreadful feeling Cain has cracked it open. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Enough for the thought of Abel to stop being merely painful and start becoming actionable. Enough for hurt to sharpen into plan. Enough for a brother to become not just the favored one, but the obstacle, the witness, the unbearable reminder standing there with his accepted offering. Smells still clinging to his clothes. Cain lifts his face eventually, but it is not lifted in peace. It is the face of a man who has stopped wrestling and started storing. He has tucked the warning somewhere he does not intend to obey. He has heard the words, weighed the humiliation, and decided that the anger remains more precious than repentance. It gives him shape. It gives him heat. It keeps him from having to kneel inside his own shame. That is the disaster beginning. Not in the field later, not in the blow itself. Here, in this quiet refusal. God has done the thing you would beg for if you saw someone on the edge. He has spoken before the act. He has named the danger before it strikes. He has handed Cain agency instead of doom. And Cain stands there, breathing hard, saying nothing, while the warning settles over the camp like evening dust. By the time the sun tilts lower and shadows stretch long over the ground, the moment has passed. Not the consequences, the chance. Abel goes on with the flock. Adam and Eve move through camp with that brittle care families use when everyone knows something is wrong, and nobody knows whether saying it will help or explode it. Cain drifts outward from them, not far in distance, but far enough in himself. His anger has not cooled. It has condensed. And now the whole world feels one conversation away from horror. The grass beyond camp bends in the wind. The fields wait. The open land waits. Cain carries the warning with him, but not like medicine. More like a stone in the mouth. Heavy, unswallowed, useless because he will not use it. Before long, he will speak to his brother, and the crouching thing will rise. And then Cain turns to his brother and says something so ordinary it makes your stomach drop. Let us go out to the field. That is all. No speech, no dramatic trembling announcement, no villain music, because nobody has invented villain music yet. Just a brother asking another brother to walk with him a little way from camp, and because the world is still young and horrifyingly naive, that sounds normal. Abel says yes. Of course he does. Why would he not? This is his brother, his older brother, the one he has lived beside every day of his life, which admittedly is not a very long history because humanity is still basically running a soft launch, but still. Brothers walk together. Brothers talk in the fields. Brothers do chores. Brothers carry things. Brothers do not invite each other out into the grass to invent homicide. That category does not exist yet. So Abel goes. You can see him falling into step without suspicion, maybe brushing dirt from his hands first, maybe glancing back, once toward the camp where Adam is bent over some tool and Eve is busy with the fire. The air is dry. Light slants over the open ground. The sheep are farther off, making those baffled little grunts that always sound like they deeply object to being sheep but have no alternative career options. Cain walks ahead at first, not quickly. That would be noticeable. Just steadily, with the stiff-backed purpose of a man who already knows where this is going and hates himself too much to stop. Abel follows, maybe saying something practical, maybe asking about the ground, maybe talking about a stone that needs moving near the edge of the plot, maybe saying nothing at all, because not every walk between brothers needs words. And now you are in the field, not the tidy sort of field from children's storybooks, where everything is gold and charming, and one tasteful breeze lifts everybody's hair. No, this is rough land, wild grass to the knee in places, dry stalks scratching your calves, patches of exposed dirt baked hard as pottery, stones underfoot, burrs waiting to attach themselves to your clothes, like needy little curses. The smell is dust, crushed weeds, hot earth, and old manure that has been working on itself in the sun. A luxury scent, really. The wind moves through the grass with that dry whispering sound that makes everything feel watched. Insects click and buzz. Somewhere nearby, a bird lifts out of the brush in a panic over nothing, because birds are like that. The sky above is enormous and empty. No wall, no city, no witness but God and the ground. Abel still does not know. That matters. He has seen death, yes, but not this kind. He has slit the throats of animals. He has watched blood steam on cool mornings. He knows what it is to lose a lamb or find a small body gone limp and strange in the grass. But human death at the hands of another human? Deliberate violence with personal hatred behind it? There is no file in his mind for that. No warning bell, no inherited caution, no uncle once muttered, Never turn your back on a jealous man. There are no uncles. There is just a brother and a field. Cain stops walking. Maybe it is near a patch of worked ground where the soil shows his labor in ragged lines. Maybe near stones he has meant to clear. Maybe beside a place where the earth is softer from recent turning. It almost does not matter. Every spot in this field is about to become the wrong spot. Abel stops too. You can picture him turning slightly, waiting for whatever Cain brought him out here to say. Maybe there is confusion in his face, maybe caution at last, but late, very late, the way you finally notice something is off after stepping onto a stair that is not there. The wind lifts the edge of his garment. Sweat cools on the back of his neck. A fly lands on his arm, and he brushes it away. Cain looks at him. Really looks. Not the quick glance of camp life. Not the sidelong look of wounded pride. This is the moment where anger narrows into action. Abel is no longer just the brother who was favored. He is a body in reach, a problem with a pulse, a living reminder standing in an empty place where nobody will interrupt. It is hideous. And it happens in the ordinary light of day. There is probably one last heartbeat where this can still stop. One last chance for Cain to turn away, swear, drop to his knees, punch the dirt, do literally anything else. Walk back, scream into the wind, throw a rock at nothing, start weeping, start praying, start dry heaving from rage and shame. The menu of better options is still embarrassingly long. He chooses none of them. He rises up against his brother. The movement is sudden because violence usually is. Not elegant, not cinematic, not one of those polished fight scenes where everyone somehow has excellent posture. It is ugly and close and shockingly human. A rush forward, hands, weight, force, Abel stumbling backward, not understanding at first because the mind reaches for the familiar. And this is not familiar. It takes him a moment. That is the terrible part. At first, it might feel like a shove, a grab, some burst of anger that will end with shouting. Brothers have jostled before. Brothers have wrestled. Bodies know confusion before they know doom. Abel is trying to make sense of his brother's face, while his brother is already past sense entirely. Cain keeps going, whether with a stone, a blow, his bare hands, whatever the exact shape of it was. The result is the same brutal fact. He does not stop when Abel falls. He does not stop when Abel cries out. He does not stop when the struggle turns from resistance to weakness. The anger that could have been mastered has now climbed onto his back and dug in its heels. This is what it wanted. The field that held only grass and wind a moment ago now holds sounds it has never heard before. A human cry like an animal's, but not an animal's. Scuffling feet, breath torn ragged with effort, the blunt impact of body against ground, dirt under fingernails, dry stalks snapping, a startled bird exploding out of the grass, then another, and then it is over. Not slowly, suddenly. That is how death arrives more often than anyone wants. One moment there is a man in front of you, the next there is a shape on the ground that is somehow still him and not him, and your whole body knows the difference before your mind catches up. Abel lies still. The world does not. The wind keeps moving. Insects keep buzzing. Somewhere far off, a sheep calls in the most insultingly normal tone imaginable. The sun does not dim in horror. The sky does not crack open. No trumpet sounds. Creation, in one of its rudest habits, continues. But the silence around Cain is enormous. He's breathing hard now, bent or half-bent, chest heaving, hands filthy, body flooded with the aftershock of what he has done. Adrenaline burns through him like bad fire. His heartbeat slams against his ribs. Sweat runs down his back. Dust clings to his legs. There may be blood on him already, and he may not register it at first, because his mind is still trying to build a bridge to this new reality, and the materials are terrible. He looks down. For the first time in the history of the world, a man is standing over a dead man he made dead. You have to sit in that for a second. Adam and Eve knew what death was as a warning, as a shadow on the horizon, as something attached to exile and pain and the long unraveling of life. Abel knew it in animals. But Cain is staring at human death, caused by human hands, and the hands are his. There is no custom for this, no burial routine, no village elders arriving with blankets and solemn faces. No one has ever had to say, "We need to tell mother." The body is wrong in a way that cannot be fixed by waiting. That might be the first thing Cain understands. Abel is not merely injured, not stunned, not sleeping. The stillness is too complete. The limbs settle with that awful final heaviness. The face, once animated by confusion or pain or pleading, has gone slack into something unbearable because it still looks like Abel, and yet the person has gone out of it. A human body without life is one of the strangest things on earth, and Cain is seeing the first one at arm's length. His brother's blood is on the ground. Human blood. Not lamb's blood in a bowl. Not the hot spill from a slaughtered animal brought for food or offering. This is blood from a brother, and it looks both familiar and utterly wrong. Dark against the dirt, bright in the light. It gathers in the dust, threads between pebbles, soaks into the root-tangled soil. The smell rises sharp and metallic, thick in the warm air. The ground drinks it. That cursed ground, that stubborn, grudging, back-breaking earth Cain has struck and cursed and sweated over for years. The same soil that gave him thorns and poor return, and an offering that somehow did not rise pleasingly enough. The ground that would not seem to bless his labor is now accepting something else from him without resistance at all. Abel sinks into it faster than any crop ever did, and that is appalling. Cain stares. Maybe he drops whatever he used. Maybe his fingers open one by one because suddenly his hand no longer belongs to him. Maybe he wipes his mouth with the back of his wrist and leaves a smear there. Maybe he takes a step backward and nearly loses his footing because the body is too close and too still, and his legs are no longer cooperating with management. This is the moment after rage. Nobody talks enough about the moment after rage. Before, anger feels hot and huge and righteous and full of speeches. After, it smells like blood and dirt and opened bowels and panic. After, the body on the ground does not get up for your emotional convenience. After, the thing you wanted to punish has become a silence you cannot argue with. Cain may have imagined hurting Abel. He almost certainly did not imagine this exact stillness, this exact weight in the air, this exact hideous practical problem of a brother-shaped body lying in a field while the afternoon goes on around it. Murder is one thing in the feverish theatre of resentment. It is another thing entirely when there are actual hands and an actual corpse and actual blood soaking into actual dirt. The field has changed forever. A place where brothers walked a few minutes ago is now the first crime scene on earth. There are broken stems where they struggled. heel marks dug into the ground, a scuff of disturbed soil, maybe one sandal partly torn loose, maybe a stone nearby wet with what should never have been on it. Everything ordinary has become evidence, though nobody has invented that word either. The flies arrive. Quickly. Of course they do. Creation has many beautiful features, but let us not oversell it. Flies can locate fresh blood with the efficiency of tiny winged bureaucrats. A few appear from nowhere, circling, landing, lifting again. The sound is small, but once you hear it, the whole field becomes more disgusting and more real. Cain hears it too, and now terror starts elbowing its way through the shock. Not noble sorrow, not clean repentance. Terror. What has he done? What does one even do after this? Drag the body? Leave it? Call for Adam? Wash? Run? Pretend? Every option is obscene. Every path back to camp now seems impossible because all of them end with Eve's face, especially Eve's face. You can almost feel that thought hit him. Mother, father, the camp, the walk back, the explanation. There is no explanation. I killed him is not a sentence any mouth has ever had to form before. Language itself probably chokes on it. The first family had words for hunger, thorns, sweat, pain, birth, shame. Now Cain has manufactured a new human sentence, and all of its words taste like dust. His brother is dead because he was angry, not hungry, not defending himself from a beast, not in some accident with a falling tree or a badly placed stone. Angry, wounded, jealous. And he took that hot inward thing and pushed it outward until it became irreversible. The warning in camp has become a corpse in a field. You can imagine him kneeling at last, not in prayer, in disbelief. A hand reaches out, maybe to shake Abel's shoulder, maybe to turn his face, maybe to prove to himself that this can still be undone by contact. The skin is warm for the moment, because death does not make a body cold all at once. That almost makes it worse. So much of Abel is still physically present. Hair, hands, familiar shoulders, the same brother he has worked beside and eaten beside and envied beside. But the animating thing, the life, the breath that made him Abel in motion and speech has departed. Cain cannot call it back. That is the new knowledge in the world. Until now, damage still lived on a spectrum. Cuts close, bruises fade, harsh words can be swallowed or ignored. Even the exile from Eden happened with everybody still breathing. But this is different. Cain has discovered a form of ruin that does not reverse before sunset. He has made an absence no one can mend by skill or apology or staying up late. The wind passes over both brothers, one standing, one fallen. Grass bends and lifts again. Dust shifts over blood-dark soil. The whole field seems to hold its breath and continue breathing at the same time, which is exactly the sort of maddening thing a world will do when your personal catastrophe does not interest the weather. Somewhere in the distance, camp smoke rises in a thin line into the sky. Home is still there. The fire still burns. Adam and Eve still move through the afternoon thinking they have 2 sons. Not for long. Cain remains over the body, and every second makes the horror heavier. The shock drains just enough to let the facts settle into their proper places. Abel will not walk back with him. Abel will not answer if spoken to. Abel will not bring another firstborn from the flock. Abel will never again stand at an altar or lift a lamb or glance sideways at Cain with that ordinary brother look that now feels like something precious smashed under a heel. The first human murder is not grand. It is petty and intimate and filthy. That is what makes it so awful. Not armies, not kings, not bronze weapons gleaming in the sun. Just one angry man and one unsuspecting brother in a field, with dirt under their nails and sweat on their backs and family waiting at home. Humanity does not begin its violence with epic warfare. It begins with domestic misery taken one monstrous step too far. And now, the ground keeps drinking. You can see the stain widening in thirsty soil, disappearing where roots and dust pull it down. Cain spent years fighting this earth for grain and yield. Now it opens for his brother's blood, as though this, at least, it knows how to receive. There is a dreadful intimacy in that. The ground he worked, the ground he cursed, the ground under his feet every day of his life. It has become witness, gravemouth, and accuser all at once. No wonder the field feels silent. Not empty, silent. As if creation itself has just learned a new word and hates the sound of it. Cain stands there in that silence, blood on the earth, blood perhaps on his skin, the warning still echoing uselessly in memory. Sin had crouched at the door. Cain opened it. And now the first brother lies in the first field, while the first murderer tries to understand what sort of world he has made with his own hands. Soon there will be a voice. Soon there will be a question. But not yet. For one terrible stretch of afternoon, there is only Cain, Abel, the stained ground, and the wind moving through the grass as though nothing has changed, though everything has. The field is quiet now, too quiet. Not peaceful quiet either, not birdsong and gentle breeze, and everyone learning a valuable lesson. This is the bad kind, the kind where the insects seem louder because a human voice has just been removed from the world, and everything else is offensively carrying on. Then God's voice breaks through like thunder on a clear day, not because the sky cracks, not because lightning scorches the grass. The terror is worse than that. It is direct, personal, unavoidable. It arrives in the open air where Cain is standing over his brother, and there is nowhere to hide because this planet still has almost no furniture. Where is Abel, your brother? You can feel the question land. It is not asked because God misplaced him. This is not divine absent-mindedness, like someone patting their pockets for a lost sandal. It is the question that drags a man into the wreckage he has made. The same terrible courtesy as in the garden. A question that opens space for truth. A question that gives Cain one last chance to step into honesty before judgment closes around him. And Cain, somehow, astonishingly, chooses lying. I do not know, sir. You are standing in a field with your brother's blood soaking into the dirt at your feet, and your response to the creator of heaven and earth is basically, no idea, couldn't tell you, maybe check with sheep management. The audacity is almost athletic. You can picture Cain saying it with that hoarse, brittle voice people get when panic is trying to disguise itself as indifference. Maybe he does not look up. Maybe he does, and that somehow makes it worse. Maybe his face is streaked with sweat and dust and whatever he has not yet noticed on his skin. The lie hangs there in the air, thin and pathetic and doomed. And then he adds the line that has been echoing through human history ever since. Am I my brother's keeper? It is such a small sentence for such a gigantic failure. Keeper. The word itself stings. Abel kept sheep. Abel watched over breathing creatures that wandered, strayed, got themselves into ridiculous trouble, and needed guarding from predators, cliffs, and their own sheep-level decision-making. Cain knows exactly what keeping means. He knows the labor of watching over what is vulnerable. He throws the word back anyway, like a man trying sarcasm while standing ankle-deep in consequences. Am I supposed to watch him? Yes. That is the brutal answer. Yes, actually. You were supposed to be the one person on earth least likely to do this. Brother was not meant to be a temporary job title ending in blunt force trauma. He was entrusted to you in the only family in the world, and instead of guarding him, you brought him out where nobody could hear him scream. The air in the field feels different now, heavier, closer, like the world itself is leaning in because we have reached the part nobody can talk their way out of. Cain has tried denial. It lasts approximately 3 seconds, about the same average lifespan as a bad excuse in front of an all-knowing God. Then comes the answer, and it is one of those lines that makes your whole skin prickle. What have you done? No screaming, no theatrical flourish, just that question, and it opens like a pit under Cain's feet. Because what has he done? He has not merely ended a life. He has altered the human world. He has taught violence to a species that had barely learned farming. He has taken jealousy, that petty, hot little kitchen fire of the soul, and turned it into a wildfire. The first brothers have become one brother and one body. Then the sentence that makes the field itself feel alive. Your brother's blood is crying out to me from the ground. That is horrifying. Abel cannot speak anymore, but his blood can. The dark stain in the soil is not silent after all. It has a voice. The earth has become witness, and not a discreet one. This field, this cursed dirt Cain has kicked, and clawed at for years, is now basically filing a formal complaint with heaven. You can almost see Cain's eyes flick down, to the ground, to the blood, to the places where the earth has swallowed what he spilled. Soil packed around pebbles, roots wet with red, dust gone clumpy and dark. The field looks ordinary from a distance. Up close, it is shouting. That line changes everything, because Cain might have hoped the open land would hide the deed. No village, no wall, no neighbor peering over a fence with the ancient equivalent of nosy suburban energy. Just grass, sky, dirt, and 2 brothers. But the dirt saw. The dirt received. The dirt now testifies. Creation itself has become a witness stand, and Cain is not prepared for cross-examination. And now the curse arrives. Not vague doom, not some abstract spiritual cloud, specific loss, specific pain, specific stripping away of the one thing Cain knows how to be. Now you are cursed from the ground. That wording matters. The ground is involved again. Always the ground. Adam had heard that the ground was cursed because of him. Thorns, sweat, frustration, all of it. Cain hears something sharper. The ground itself turns against him personally. Not just stubborn soil anymore. Hostile soil. Soil with memory. When you work the ground, it shall no longer yield to you its strength. That sentence lands like an axe. Because this is not merely punishment. This is the collapse of identity. Cain is a tiller of the ground. He knows dirt under the nails, sun on the neck, blisters, sweat in the eyes, the ache of hauling stones, the sour feeling of seed wasted on bad patches. Farming is miserable. Yes, but it is his miserable. It is what he wakes up to do. It is how he understands himself. And now even that is gone. Imagine hearing that the only skill you have on earth has been revoked, not downgraded, revoked. The field where Abel died is already useless to him in one way. But now, every field becomes that field. Every furrow he cuts will remember. Every patch of turned soil will be stingy. Every seed bag he opens will carry the humiliation of knowing the ground has decided, with divine backing, that it is done cooperating. For a farmer, this is annihilation. You can survive many things if you still know what your hands are for. Cain's hands knew soil. They knew digging sticks, weed pulling, seed scattering, harvest gathering, the whole muddy, back-breaking business. Now those same hands are attached to a man who cannot trust the earth to answer them. He can still dig, he can still plant, he can still sweat. It just will not matter. That is cruel in the precise way judgment often is. The thing you used, the place where it happened, the identity wrapped around your sin, all of it is folded into the consequence. Cain spilled blood into the ground, and now the ground refuses him. The earth he fed with murder will not feed him in return, and that is not all. You shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth. There it is, the second blow. First, the ground rejects him. Then place itself rejects him. Cain, who worked fixed patches of soil, who lived with boundaries and routines and labor tied to one piece of land, is now cut loose. No stable field, no dependable camp, no place where his tools can stay in one corner and his sleeping mat in another. He is to become human driftwood, a fugitive and a wanderer. That means looking over your shoulder. That means never quite unpacking. That means smoke in the distance makes your stomach knot, because maybe it is strangers. Maybe it is family. Maybe it is memory. It means every path is temporary. Every shelter is provisional. Every night is one more night in a world suddenly much larger and less welcoming than it was yesterday. For a man born into the first household on earth, this is terrifying. People sometimes hear wandering and picture something romantic. Open road, freedom, wind in your hair, a rustic little travel montage. No, not this. This is sleeping with one eye open on hard ground that smells like dust, old ash, and animal droppings. This is carrying what you can and losing what you cannot. This is eating badly, washing rarely, and developing the suspicious posture of a man who has not felt safe in years. Cain hears it all, cursed from the ground, no yield, fugitive, wanderer, and finally the bravado drains out of him. My punishment is greater than I can bear. That is the first genuinely human thing he says in this exchange, and you feel it immediately. Because yes, he is guilty. Yes, he lied. Yes, he murdered his brother, and then answered God like a teenager caught with a shattered lamp, standing in a room full of broken glass. But now the fear comes through, raw and unmistakable. He is not posturing anymore. He is scared. Driven away today from the ground and from your face, I shall be hidden. You can hear how total the loss feels to him. Ground gone, presence gone, home gone, routine gone. The old life is over so thoroughly that even the sky probably looks unfamiliar. Cain is not calculating now. He is reeling. He has suddenly grasped that after the rage burns out, you still have to live in the world you created. And he keeps going. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me. That line gives you a strange little jolt, because the world still feels so empty. Whoever finds me. Who exactly is on this planet besides the family? But fear does not wait for census data. Fear populates the horizon very quickly. Cain has done a thing that deserves blood, and he knows it. He knows what murder makes possible now, because he just invented it. The logic of revenge has entered the chat, and it is already deeply unpleasant. He expects retaliation. Of course he does. The first murderer immediately understands that a world with murder in it is a world where murder can return to sender. Once the door is open, everyone has to sleep with that draft. Cain looks at the future and sees ambush, vengeance, stones in angry hands, eyes narrowing when his name is spoken. He has become dangerous, and dangerous men do not usually die peacefully in bed, surrounded by affectionate grandchildren. So, he is afraid. Not noble sorrow for Abel. Not that, at least not here. Fear for himself, fear of exposure, fear of living hunted in a world where he has taught people exactly what hunting a person can mean. It is self-protective and limited, and still, somehow, pitiable. Because this is what sin does in the aftermath. It does not only wound others, it turns the sinner into a frightened animal pacing inside a cage he built himself. And then, in one of the strangest moments in the whole story, judgment does not have the last word. God answers him. Not with execution, not with immediate destruction, with protection. Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. You can feel the surprise of that hit the field. Wait. What? Cain has murdered his brother, lied to God, flung a sarcastic little line into the face of divine questioning. The blood is still damp in the dirt. And instead of ending him on the spot, God places a boundary around him, a warning to everyone else. Touch this man, and the consequence multiplies. It is bewildering mercy, not soft mercy, not permissive mercy. Cain is still cursed. He still loses home, vocation, stability, all of it. But he is not abandoned to immediate revenge. God does not allow the first murder to become the first blood feud by sundown. Violence will not be answered with more violence quite so quickly. The chain stops here, at least for the moment, because God says so. Then comes the mark. The Lord puts a mark on Cain, lest anyone finding him should attack him. And of course, your mind immediately wants details. What kind of mark? Where? On the forehead? On the hand? Something visible? Something only felt? A scar? A sign? A change in his face? Ancient stories can be deeply rude in this way. They hand you one of the most haunting images imaginable and then refuse to provide a sketch. No diagrams, no labeled illustration. Just a mark, and everyone who sees it understands one thing. This man is under judgment, and this man is under protection. It is not decorative. This is not some rustic accessory, the world's worst souvenir from a deeply upsetting family outing. This mark says that Cain belongs to God even in punishment. It says his life is not available for freelance vengeance. It says the murderer carries a sign that he may not be murdered in return by private hands. You can picture Cain standing there as that protection is given, still streaked with grime, still breathing the copper smell of Abel's blood, still beside the field that has become a witness against him forever, and now marked, set apart in the most terrible way, not acquitted, not restored, preserved. He must live. That, in some ways, is harder. Death would end the story quickly. Wandering prolongs it. To wake up each day with memory, to walk under sun and rain and bad weather and worse thoughts. To know that the soil under your feet remembers your brother better than you guarded him. To feel the mark on your life, whatever shape it took, and know that mercy has kept you alive without removing what you did. Imagine going back toward camp after this. Or maybe not even going all the way back. Maybe only near enough to gather what little can be carried. A tool, a skin of water, a cloak. Maybe Adam and Eve appear in the distance, their faces already wrong, because they can see from far away that Abel is not with him. That is a scene no one survives unchanged. Eve, who once held both boys against her body, now seeing one approach alone. Adam, already bent by the ground, now bent by something much worse. Nobody has a script for this. No funeral customs yet. No mourning clothes. No practiced phrases. Just a body in a field and a family learning grief with no training whatsoever. Abel must be lifted from the earth by the same hands that once lifted him as a child. The first grave must be dug by a father whose own punishment involved dirt in the first place. That shovel work is brutal. Every thrust into the soil saying this was not supposed to happen like this. And Cain does not stay. He cannot. The curse has already cut him loose. The mark has already set him apart. The place where he grew up, rough as it was, can no longer hold him. Even if Adam says nothing, even if Eve collapses into a sorrow too large for speech, even if nobody lifts a hand against him, the sentence stands. Fugitive, wanderer, he is leaving, so he goes. Out past the worked fields, past the places where Abel's sheep once grazed, past the stones he used to clear from stubborn patches of earth, past the little routines of first family life, the fire pit, the sleeping places, the tools leaned against rock, the smell of smoke and sweat and old wool, all of it behind him now, home reduced to memory and consequence. You can see him walking with the posture of a man who does not know where to put his eyes. Ahead is empty land. Behind is blood. The mark goes with him. The fear goes with him. The mercy goes with him too. And that may be the strangest burden of all. Because now every sunrise he survives will be both judgment and gift. Every meal he scrapes together, every shelter, every cold night he makes it through, he will live because God allowed him to live. That is hard to swallow. It should be hard to swallow. A part of you wants cleaner math. Crime, punishment, done. Nice, tidy moral accounting with a satisfying slam of the door. But this world is not tidy, not even at the beginning. The first murderer is not erased. He's marked and sent out breathing. Protected even. Forced to carry his life onward through the dust, and now we arrive at the part nobody forgets. God asked, "Where is your brother?" Cain answered like brotherhood was optional. But the whole story has already made the answer plain. Yes, he was his brother's keeper. He failed at the most basic human task before humanity had even reached 5 people and a goat fence. Watch over one another. Do not feed your rage until it starts asking for a body. Do not pretend the ground is deaf. It hears more than you think. Cain walks away under sentence and under protection, both at once. That is the shape of his future now. No field will love him. No place will keep him. The earth will feel wider, harsher, and full of memory. Yet his life remains untouched by any hand but God's. He will bear the mark into lonely places, into long years, into a history that has only just begun to taste how bitter human violence can be. And behind him, in the field, Abel's blood has already spoken. The ground remembers. And the world, young as it still is, will never again be innocent in quite the same way. 3 days pass, nothing improves. Cain keeps walking east, always east, farther from the field and the grave and the sound of his mother's voice breaking somewhere behind him. The land changes slowly, which is honestly rude. You want a dramatic shift. Black rocks, red sky, a sign that says, "Welcome to your consequences." Instead, it is just more earth, more scrub, more wind, more hard ground under sore feet. The mark goes with him. You never get told exactly what it looks like, and that somehow makes it worse. Maybe it burns in cold weather. Maybe strangers notice it before he speaks. Maybe children stare. Maybe he catches his reflection in still water and sees a face he barely recognizes, dusty and older, and carrying that unmistakable look of a man whose life has become a cautionary tale before breakfast. And so, Cain walks away into Nod, wandering. That is the name of the place. He settles in wandering, which is the kind of thing that sounds poetic until you actually live there and realize it means no roots, no ease, no sense that the ground beneath you plans to keep you. It is like moving to a town called regret and pretending the branding is subtle. The first nights are ugly. You sleep badly because every sound feels personal. Wind through dry grass, small animals scuttling, branches creaking, your own heartbeat acting like a drum solo in your ears. The dirt gets into everything. Your food, your sandals, your blanket, your teeth, the folds of your clothes, and probably your soul while it's at it. He has to learn a new kind of surviving. Farming is over. That life is gone. The old rhythm of digging, planting, waiting, cursing at the soil, trying again, all of that has been stripped from him. So now you picture him living rough, scavenging, hunting badly at first, gathering what he can, sleeping under rough shelters that smell like grass, old smoke, and the lingering essence of panic. Days become weeks. Weeks become years. And in the long, stubborn way life has of refusing to stop just because somebody has ruined everything, Cain does not die. He eats, he drinks, he wakes up. He keeps moving until moving becomes less of an emergency and more of a condition. The man marked for wandering discovers the deeply annoying fact that human beings can adapt to almost anything, including guilt. Then the strangest thing happens. He builds. That is such a human response it almost hurts. You lose Eden, so you make a camp. You lose the camp, so you stack stones. You lose the right to settled ground, and somehow you start laying out walls anyway. Cain, the fugitive, the exile, the first murderer, builds the first city. Can you believe this? Not a city the way you think of one, obviously. No boulevards, no bakeries with cute little awnings, no cobbled squares where people sip things and gossip. This is first attempt human urban planning, which means rough boundary lines, basic shelters, smoke everywhere, animals too close to people, and sanitation so bad it would fail every inspection ever invented. Still, it is a city. You can see the logic of it. Wandering gets old. Sleeping exposed gets old faster. A wall means something. A gate means something. Even a crude cluster of huts packed together says we are trying against all available evidence to make the world less terrible than it was yesterday. Cain gathers people, or maybe family branches spread and settle near him, and the lonely fugitive becomes the founder of a place. A murderer invents address systems. That feels on brand for humanity, honestly. The city rises out of sweat and mud and fear. Stones dragged into place, timber cut and hauled, hands blistered, backs screaming. Everybody smells like smoke, damp wool, animal fat, and whatever terrible paste passes for construction adhesive when civilization is 8 minutes old. A trench gets dug, posts go up, roofs appear. Somebody immediately stores grain too close to where they sleep, and now the whole place belongs to mice. But it stands. and Cain names it after his son, Enoch. That detail lands with a strange softness. For all the hardness in Cain's life, he looks at this child and does what parents do. He wants the future to carry a name he loves. He wants continuity. He wants something that sounds less like wandering and more like permanence. So the city gets the boy's name, stamped onto dust and wood and stone, as if naming can hold chaos back. Enoch grows up inside walls his father built. Imagine that childhood. Your father is famous in the worst possible way. Though maybe by then nobody tells the little ones all the details at first. They just know he goes quiet when the old places are mentioned. They know there is a mark and no one touches it. They know he can stare into the fire like a man reading something written in smoke. They know there are whole subjects that make the camp go still. The city grows anyway. Children run between huts with dirty knees and runny noses. Women grind grain until their shoulders ache. Men mend tools, haul water, chase straying animals, and argue over boundaries because apparently the human species invented property disputes almost immediately. Smoke rises every evening. Pots boil. Babies cry. Dogs, if they exist yet in this little world, are probably underfoot being magnificently unhelpful. Life after the unforgivable does not stop being life. That is one of the unsettling parts. You expect the sky to stay dark forever. You expect every meal to taste like ashes. Sometimes it probably does. But then a child laughs. Someone tells a joke. Rain falls on the roof. A pot cracks. Somebody burns the flatbread again. The ordinary keeps elbowing its way into the catastrophic. And now we arrive at the descendants. This little line that began in blood starts producing culture, which is almost offensively complicated. You would think the family of the first murderer might specialize in, I don't know, brooding, sitting dramatically on rocks, staring at ravens. But no, they become builders of the human world. One of them is Jabal. He becomes the father of those who live in tents and keep livestock. So now picture open country dotted with hide tents, pegged down against the wind. Herds moving in shaggy clumps, goats with that deeply judgmental expression they have had since creation, sheep wandering off the second nobody looks at them, cow dung drying in the sun, everything smelling like lanolin, leather, trampled grass and old milk. Jabal's people learn movement without chaos, not wandering as punishment now, but roaming with purpose. Camp rolled up at dawn, stakes pulled, herds prodded forward, fires stamped out, kids carried half asleep, water skins sloshing against sore hips. It is portable, life, the ancient version of packing your entire existence into a vehicle, except the vehicle is a donkey and it has absolutely no interest in cooperating. Then comes Jubal. Jubal is the father of musicians, of those who play the lyre and the pipe, which means somewhere in this rough early world, with all its dust and grief and animal smell, somebody decides to make music. Not just work songs muttered through clenched teeth. Music, music. Strings stretched tight, reeds cut and shaped, breath turned into melody. That is kind of astonishing. You can picture the first time a real tune lifts over camp at dusk, smoke in the air, light fading, everyone tired, dirty, and one minor inconvenience away from a full emotional collapse. Then a string hums. A pipe answers. The sound wavers at first, thin and uncertain, but then it steadies. And suddenly, all this raw human life has accompaniment. What must that have felt like? You've grown up in a world of wind, animal noise, weeping, hammering, scraping, and the endless complaint of labor. Then someone plucks a pattern out of silence, and your whole chest tightens. It is the first campfire concert, except nobody knows what a concert is yet, and everyone probably smells terrible. Music arrives through Cain's line. That is the part that catches in your mind. Beauty showing up in a family with blood on its history. A flute in the house of exile. A song rising where murder once began. Human beings are apparently capable of producing lament and melody from the same set of lungs. And then, Tubal Cain. Now things get louder. Tubal Cain works bronze and iron. So step near that workshop and feel the heat punch you in the face. Sparks jump. Smoke stings your eyes. Metal glows like an angry little sun while hammers crash against it with all the gentleness of a door-to-door salesman kicking in the door. The air smells of charcoal, hot stone, sweat, and scorched hair because somebody got too close again. This is the beginning of forged things. Blades, hooks, points, tools that bite deeper, knives that hold an edge, implements for farming, building, cutting, shaping. Civilization gets hardware, and it comes from the descendants of Cain. The same line marked by violence gives the world metallurgy, which is very human. The hand that can make a plough can also make a weapon. The furnace does not choose. You watch the first smiths at work, and it is mesmerizing. Bellows wheezing, fire roaring, arms slick with sweat. Hammer strikes ringing out across the settlement like the ancient version of a construction site that started at dawn and will apparently continue until morale improves, which it never does. A glowing bar laid on stone. Hit, turn, hit again, quench. Steam leaps up with a hiss that smells like mineral water and hot mud. Tools change everything. A better blade means more wood cut. More wood means stronger shelters. Stronger shelters mean more people survive winter. Better awls mean better leatherwork. Better metal tips mean stronger spears. Progress is arriving in smoke-blackened workshops, run by people carrying complicated family histories. And somewhere in this same line comes Lamech. He takes wives, Ada and Zillah, and the old simplicity of one man and one woman in a garden is now long gone, buried under generations of improvisation and appetite. By the time you reach him, family life is already getting more tangled, more crowded, more dramatic. Human beings have had very little practice and are already making everything messy. Lamech also sings a little song of his own, and it is not exactly soothing. He boasts about killing a man for wounding him, a young man for striking him. He talks vengeance in escalating numbers, like somebody trying to win a family trauma competition no one asked to attend. Cain was protected sevenfold, and Lamech says his own. Vengeance would be 77-fold. So the violence has not vanished. It has learned poetry and become more unbearable. That is the bitter thread running under all this progress. Cities rise, music plays, metal sings under the hammer, herds spread across the hills. Children are born, art and skill and invention bloom. But the old wound is still there, pulsing under the skin of the family. Human culture grows fast. So does human arrogance. Back near Adam and Eve, the years are not easier. The camp without Cain would already feel wrong. The camp without Abel as well is unbearable. One son is dead under the ground. The other is alive somewhere beyond the horizon, unreachable, marked and altered forever. Eve has not merely lost a child. She has lost the shape of her family. The soundscape of home is changed. One voice gone entirely, another gone into exile. You can picture her doing ordinary things with extraordinary grief, lodged under every movement. grinding grain, tending fire, washing skins, looking up every time footsteps sound, for a fraction of a second forgetting, then remembering all over again. There is no support group, no village women saying, "I brought stew, sit down," no inherited ritual for a mother whose first son murdered her second. She is inventing mourning from scratch. That is brutal. The first grave on earth belongs to her son. The first exile on earth is also her son. She has, in one catastrophic chain of events, become the first bereaved mother and the first mother of a murderer. Every memory of their childhood is poisoned now. Cain as a boy, Abel as a baby. Two little bodies sleeping near the same fire. Two sets of footprints in the dirt. She held both of them. She fed both of them. She watched one bury the other by forcing it to happen. Years pass. Hair grays. Faces crease. Adam moves slower. Eve carries sorrow. The way some people carry old injuries, always present, flaring in bad weather. And then another child is born. Another son. Seth. The name itself feels like a hand laid gently over a wound that will never fully close. Appointed. Given. Granted in place of what was lost. Not as a replacement in the cheap sense, because no child replaces a dead brother or an exiled son. Families are not jars in a pantry where you just put a new one on the shelf and call it even. But Seth is given as mercy inside grief. Eve says it plainly. God has appointed me another offspring instead of Abel, for Cain killed him. Listen to the weight of that sentence. No pretending, no smoothing it over. She names both losses in one breath. Another offspring instead of Abel. For Cain killed him. There it is, the whole horror compressed into one mother's words. She is still counting by absence, still speaking her dead son's name, still speaking the living son's guilt. You feel how quiet the camp must have gone when she said it, a baby in her arms, firelight moving over worn faces, Adam nearby, older now than anyone had ever been in the history of the world, and Eve, the first woman, saying out loud what happened, not with abstract language, not with polite vagueness. Cain killed him. That wound remains in the center of the family, and nobody gets to pretend otherwise. Seth grows. Another generation begins. Children are born to him too. People start calling on the name of the Lord again, which feels like a small, steady light in all this wreckage. Not paradise restored, not innocence regained, just worship continuing in a broken world. That matters. Meanwhile, far off in Nod, Cain City keeps standing. Its walls weather, its children become adults. Livestock bawl in their pens. Music drifts at night. Metal rings under the hammer. Arguments happen. Weddings happen. Births happen. Deaths happen now too, because death has entered and made itself thoroughly at home. Life after the unforgivable goes on, crowded and noisy and deeply imperfect. Cain himself grows old somewhere inside that world he helped start. You can imagine him walking the edge of the city at dusk, hearing a pipe in one house and a baby crying in another, smelling cook fires, manure, hot metal, wet clay after rain. Civilization gathering itself around a man who once stood in a field with blood on his hands and no idea what came next. He cannot undo what he did. He cannot unmake Abel. He cannot go back. But the human story keeps building around him anyway. That is the strange, stubborn aftermath. Not neat justice. Not easy healing. A city built by a marked man. Music from the line of exile. Tools and tents and trade and family life spreading out from a household that began in catastrophe. And back with Eve, a child laid in her arms where grief still lives, proof that loss does not end the future, even when it changes it forever. The world is getting older now, less innocent, more skilled, more dangerous, more full. And somewhere east of Eden, under walls raised by trembling hands, the first city endures for a while, built in the land of wandering, by a man who could never fully outrun the ground. So, after all of that, after the altars and the field, and the blood crying out from the ground, you can almost feel yourself close the Bible for a second, and just sit with it. Because this whole thing is not just a grim family disaster with terrible conflict resolution skills. It lands on your chest with something bigger. It is taking all that raw human mess and saying, this is where so much of your world began. Not just farming and cities and flutes and metalwork, but resentment, responsibility, mercy, grief, and the awful speed with which one bad inward turn can become something you cannot undo. You keep coming back to the offerings because that is where the crack opens. Cain and Abel both bring something. That matters. Cain is not lounging on a rock eating figs and refusing to participate. He shows up. He brings the work of his hands. But Abel brings the first and the fat portions, the best of what he has, and that difference lands hard. The point does not feel like vegetables being inferior and sheep getting some strange VIP pass. It is that one brother is offering with open hands and the other is going through the motions with a clenched jaw. You can feel the discomfort of that. It is the ancient version of showing up with a gift you technically bought while secretly resenting the entire event. Same wrapping paper, very different spirit. That altar scene is about the posture underneath the offering. Not just what leaves your hand, but what is happening in your heart while it does. Then you get to the warning, and honestly, it feels almost unbearably merciful. Cain is not ignored. He is not left alone to spiral in the dark like a man rage-scrolling his own humiliation. He is seen, spoken to, warned directly. The danger gets described like an animal crouched at the door, muscles tight, waiting for the second you unlatch it. That image sticks because it feels exactly right. Temptation is rarely some random lightning bolt from nowhere. It waits. It watches. It studies your bad mood and your sore spot and your bruised pride. And still, Cain is told he can master it. That matters so much. The anger is real, but it is not in charge unless he hands it the keys. The crouching thing is hungry, yes, but it is not unbeatable. So you feel one hard truth settle in. The worst thing you might do usually starts much earlier, in smaller rooms, in quieter moments. A fallen face, a brewing resentment, an injured ego nursing itself like it deserves a blanket and soup. By the time you reach the field, the chain has already been building. That is why the murder lands with such force. Violence does not come out of a clear blue sky wearing a fake mustache. It grows. It feeds on grievance. It sharpens itself on comparison. It keeps muttering that you were wronged, overlooked, disrespected, and surely everybody will understand if you just take one ugly step. Then one ugly step becomes a body in the grass. That is the horror of Cain. Not that he was born a monster. It would almost be easier if he were. No, he is frightening, because he is recognizably human. Hurt, ashamed, angry, proud, unwilling to bend, unwilling to admit need, unwilling to master the thing that wants him. The story is saying that murder begins long before the blow. It begins wherever envy is fed, and anger is allowed to set up a studio apartment in your chest. Then that line hits you. Am I my brother's keeper? It is one of those sentences that comes out slick and defiant, and then hangs in the air smelling faintly of smoke and nonsense. Because yes, you absolutely are. That is the answer. That is practically the whole point of the scene. Human life is not meant to be one long solo project where everybody shrugs and says, "Not my problem," while their neighbor bleeds out in a field. The question exposes the ugliness perfectly. Cain wants to pretend responsibility ends at his own skin. My offering, my anger, my business, my field. But the story will not allow that smallness. It insists that your brother matters to you. Your sister matters to you. The vulnerable person, the inconvenient person, the annoying person, the person standing too close to your goats and getting on your last nerve. All of them matter. You are tied to one another whether you like it or not. That is not presented as a burden only. It is also what makes human life human. Without that responsibility, you do not get family or community or protection or tenderness. You just get wandering self-interest in dusty sandals. The story says, no, you belong to each other in a real way, and pretending otherwise is one more lie piled on top of blood. Then comes the part nobody expects, the mark. This is where the whole thing gets strange in the way the oldest stories often do. Cain is judged clearly. Nothing about what happened in that field gets waved away with a cheerful little "mistakes were made." He loses the ground. He loses home. He carries consequences for the rest of his life. But he is also protected. The murderer receives mercy. That does not erase Abel. It does not cancel grief or flatten justice into something soft and meaningless. It just tells you that divine judgment and divine mercy are not enemies standing in opposite corners with folding chairs. They can appear in the same moment. Cain is punished, and Cain is preserved. He becomes a living reminder that even the worst person is not outside the reach of restraint and protection. That is unsettling on purpose. Most of us prefer our villains simple. We want neat labels, immediate endings, tidy credits rolling over the ashes. Instead, you get a marked man allowed to live. Which means the story is saying something uncomfortable and important. The human world will contain people who have done terrible things, and God's dealings with them may include both consequence and mercy. That is harder to digest than stale barley bread, and somehow even less pleasant. Then you get to nod, and the whole thing turns rude in its realism. Life after the unforgivable goes on. Differently, yes. Scarred, yes. Bent out of shape forever, yes. But it goes on. Children are born. Cities are built. Music appears. Metal glows in the forge. Sheep wander off being profoundly unhelpful. Bread still burns. Rain still falls. Human beings continue the deeply suspicious habit of waking up the next morning and needing breakfast. That matters because it names the world honestly. Civilization is not built by flawless people with excellent boundaries and a refreshing emotional maturity. It is built by broken people, exiles, grievers, strivers, people with family histories they do not put on the welcome sign. The first city rises from the line of Cain. The first music comes from that same household. The first metalwork too. Beauty and damage keep showing up in the same family, sometimes in the same person. That is not the story excusing evil. It is the story refusing fantasy. Human culture has always been like this, glorious and compromised, creative and dangerous, a song in one tent, a threat in the next, a plough forged beside a blade, a lullaby drifting over a settlement founded by somebody who once stood over his brother's body. And then there is Eve. Her grief is part of the meaning too. One son dead, one son gone. Then Seth, not replacing what was lost, but arriving as mercy inside loss. So the story does not end in the field. It keeps walking until it reaches a mother holding another child with scar tissue still thick around her heart. That is the final tenderness of it. Loss changes the future, but it does not cancel it. The family line continues. Worship continues. Life continues, though nobody gets innocence back. So when you step away from all of it, a few hard truths keep following you. You feel the weight of it. What you bring matters. What you feed in your heart matters. The ugly thing usually starts long before the final act. Your brother matters. Judgment is real. And somehow mercy can still appear in places you would least expect it, even on the forehead of a murderer walking east. That is the old truth still sitting there in the dust. Human beings are dangerous when wounded pride goes unruled. Human beings are responsible for one another. God sees what spills into the ground. And even after catastrophe, the world does not end. It limps forward, it builds, it sings, it buries, it names children. It calls on God again. Not Eden restored. Something harder than that. A broken world where responsibility still matters, mercy still appears, and the future still arrives, carrying both grief and breath. You stand there a little longer, as if leaving the field too quickly would be rude. The grass bends and rises in the wind. Dust skims low across the ground. Somewhere far off, an animal calls out, and the sound fades so completely you almost wonder if you imagined it. But the silence that follows is real, heavy, open, old. And now the field is quiet. The wind moves through the grass, and the story settles into the silence where it has always belonged. You can almost see it still. Two brothers walking out beneath a wide sky. One unsuspecting, one carrying something dark and hot behind his ribs. No cities yet, no courtrooms, no guards, no vocabulary for what is about to happen. Just earth, breath, grass, and a human heart going badly wrong in a world still new enough to feel unfinished. That ground has had a long time to bury the evidence. Rain would have come. Dust would have settled. Seasons would have rolled over it again and again, piling on their thin blankets of pollen, mud, dead, leaves, and time. The blood is long gone from sight. The field would look ordinary now, which is almost offensive. History does that. It covers the worst moments with grass and acts casual. Still, it remembers. That is why the story keeps breathing long after the brothers are dust. Every time anger rises in someone and does not get to take the wheel, this old field matters. Every time a person steps back from the thing crouching at the door instead of opening it wide like a fool answering a midnight knock, Abel matters. Every time mercy lands on somebody who absolutely, profoundly, embarrassingly does not deserve it, the mark on Cain has not been forgotten. You know that feeling. Not the murder, maybe, but the flare of insult, the hot little courtroom in your chest, the instant case building, the mind going, "Oh, excellent, now I will replay this injury 17 times and make it my whole personality for the afternoon." The story endures because it knows that human machinery far too, well, same heart, same bruised pride, same danger. And still the question remains, where is your brother? It lingers over generations because it refuses to stay in one field. It follows people into houses, markets, roads, kitchens, workshops, temples, farms, and all the other places where human beings irritate, wound, help, ignore, protect, betray, and feed one another. It is not a fancy question. It is painfully direct. Where is the one you were supposed to care about? Sometimes the answer is comforting. Sometimes your brother is safe, your sister is fed, your neighbor is seen, the stranger is spared, the angry word is swallowed before it turns into something uglier. Sometimes the crouching thing does not get in. Sometimes the chain breaks early. Sometimes a field stays only a field. And sometimes mercy appears where nobody would have ordered it. That part still startles. Cain walking away, marked, not erased. Judged, but not abandoned to immediate revenge. Protected, though guilty. It is one of those details that sits in the mind like a stone in your sandal. Uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. You keep feeling it with every step, because human beings like justice, clean and simple, and instead they get this strange, difficult mercy traveling beside it. So the story stays with you, not as a lecture, more like a footprint that never quite washes out, a bloodstain beneath the dust, a question hanging in evening air. You carry the field with you because the field keeps happening, in quieter ways, in smaller choices, in rooms where no grass grows and no sheep wander through being utterly useless. The wind keeps moving. The old ground keeps holding what was spilled into it. The brothers are gone. Adam is gone. Eve is gone. The first city rose and crumbled. The altars broke down into stones again. The flutes went silent. The metal rusted. But the question remained, and the mercy remained, and the warning remained, waiting at the door of every new generation. The field is still there, somewhere under layers of dust and roots and years. Quieter now, but still there. And somewhere the story continues.